rolling, rolling, rolling. We are rolling. Welcome everybody. Welcome. So I'm just gonna play a quick poem as everybody starts joining. Hi everyone. I'm quickly gonna play a poem. I usually play a poem just as we start to warm us into everything and get us, thinking about things. Let me know if you can hear me, just so that I know the sound is good, and then I can start playing the poem. It is called One Poet's Cry for Black Lives in the Face of Injustice, and it's by a guy called Prince Amoako. I'm gonna put all the information in my bio after the video has saved up. So I'm gonna play the poem for you guys while we wait for everybody else to get here.
My name is Prince Amoako, and the name of this poem is If I watched them try to colonize Colin Kaepernick, but couldn't take his shit from him. Cause what he knelt for will always be greater than what you stood for. North America will never be great again. Tell your mama, tell your friends that the Reaper is coming. Little by little we solving this riddle, our future is brittle. The Grim Reaper took my soul when the man who killed me was acquitted. Ain't nothing new, except for the facts that I've been telling you. I know the color of my skin reflects the moon, but doesn't reflect bullets, cause my melanin ain't Black Panther, vibranium bulletproof. But when I die, I still shout Wakanda forever, forever and ever, amen. I watched a young black boy bleed out the scriptures his mama once whispered in his ear. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Then mama, why was the white man's cane able to beat me down and the life of my blood making no sounds to heaven? While my blood danced and maneuvered through the cracks and pebbles on the ground as I watched lifelessly, what a sight to see. My mama screaming in the streets, young black boys, please don't drive cars with your families. Rest in peace, Philando Castile. Young black boys, aim for the stars, but don't get caught under them. That's when the police will beat you like Rodney King, cause at night is when men and officers turn beasts. But mama didn't know getting caught at night now is obsolete, cause they can kill us in broad daylight with our hands behind our back, face down, constantly screaming, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't. Rest in peace, Eric Gardner. But officer, I can see your intentions. Your heart is filled with melanin cause you're just as dark as me. And even though this city was built off the backs of my ancestors, there's no need to walk all over my back. Literally, I got a mother, a father, a brother, a sister who are all home right now waiting for bow. Mama, I watched them kill one of my brothers and put him in the dirt. And I know that you said no weapon formed against me shall prosper, but mama, I really don't want to get hurt. So maybe, just maybe, mama, no weapon formed against me will not prosper. It's only true if I shoot first. Just seeing the injustice happening over the past couple of years, starting with Trayvon, Eric Gardner, and all those individuals just really inspired me to write something because I feel like I connected with them on some kind of level because that could be me, right?
Okay, so that was a poem by a poet called Prince Amoako, and it's about Black lives in the face of endless injustice. Welcome to everybody. Usually what I'll do at the beginning of every live session is I play a piece of music or a poem about whatever topic it is we're talking about, just so that people can maybe start thinking about it before we start and get mellow and relaxed and be prepared to have this topic. I'm just waiting for my co-host, Charmaine, to enter the chat room, and then we can get started. In case I haven't already greeted you, hi to everybody. My name is Ropa Fadzo Mangwari, and this is Fuzzo Productions. It's a place where we just want to have conversations that are affecting people every day in a safe environment that is non-judgmental, non-toxic, and just allows us to ask questions in a free and constructive way, and allows us to have open conversations about things that might be a little bit uncomfortable. And I'm a strong believer that if you're uncomfortable, it's room for you to really look at what is going on and figure out why you're uncomfortable, and look at it from a constructive point of view rather than I'm uncomfortable so I don't want to have this conversation. So I'm just adding my co-host for today. Her name is Charmaine Magumbe. If you guys haven't met her, she is a phenomenal lady. She is like everything. Like literally, I look at her as one of my mentors. She's very active when it comes to race relations and just activism within Peterborough. She's a very inspiring lady, and she's going to be breaking down a lot about some of the things that are happening within the African American and the Black community, not just in America, but in Canada as well. I think a lot of people have a misconception that this is an American problem, but it's closer to home than we think. So I'm just waiting for Charmaine to accept. Let's see. There we go. So as she adds herself, we might be having a little bit of a technical difficulty, but Charmaine will be joining us soon. And if any of you guys have any questions for us throughout the live session, please feel free to add them. This is a very free environment. We're open to conversations. No question is a bad question. You're better off asking it and getting clarification than not knowing at all and then just acting without knowing if it's going to have any negative repercussions or not. I feel like we're having some technical difficulties with getting Charmaine to come in. So I'm going to try and add her one more time. Okay, as we wait, I'm just going to run you guys by the itinerary for the evening. Before I start, I am going to give out a disclaimer. I'm in no way claiming that I know everything about the topic, and I will be sharing all the opinions that will be shared here are all opinions that are based on my own opinion and my own experience, and I'm sure Charmaine is the same. And this is, again, a safe space, and we encourage people to participate and ask questions. It may be uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable conversation to have for a lot of us, but it's important for us to talk about it. And I will just say, if you feel a little bit overwhelmed by some of the content that we're going to be talking about, I'm giving you permission to just like take a little bit of a break, and step aside if you have to, and come back and regroup. I will also say that if you want any more information, feel free to Google it. Yay, Charmaine is here! The woman of the hour.
Technical difficulties. Oh my gosh.
It's okay, you're here and that's all that matters. I'm just giving a quick disclaimer for everybody, just so that we get that out of the way before we start. And then the last disclaimer is that we should be respectful in our interactions. Again, I think it's important that we ask questions, but let's be respectful of everybody's opinion. You don't have to agree, but you can listen. So Yeah.
I'm gonna try to get the lighting a little bit better. I'm really new at this, but I'm trying to. Could you guys see me? It's horrible. I
You
don't
need to
know.
turn your camera this way. There we
Oh,
go.
like that? Oh,
Yeah.
that's better. So good. Oh my God. And this is not what I want it to be, but anyhow,
You look
we'll manage it.
good.
I know, but it's like anyhow.
Okay.
I can't comb my hair and everything, so
We appreciate that. I like tried to look pretty. I was like, oh, let me just get out of my pajamas. Okay,
oh, and
so
it's so
I'm
awkward
gonna
to
start the
read it.
program. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with a land acknowledgement. I'm looking to the side because I have my presentation in case anybody's wondering. Yeah, but we respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe people. We offer our gratitude to the First People for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. For everybody who's joining, today we will be talking about racism and racial discrimination and just like talking about race, just in general. And we want to answer your questions as well. Obviously, I received some questions from my various social medias from people, and did a quick Google search as well of some questions that people had. So we are going to be answering some of those questions. And I have Charmaine here to give us a little bit more information and hopefully help educate and empower us to move forward in these uncertain times. Charmaine, do you mind introducing yourself for people who
Yeah.
might not know who you are?
So I'm Charmaine Magumbe, and I'm a chairperson of Community Race Relations here in Peterborough. I've been the chairperson for the last 4 years. I'm involved in the community, organizing different social activists activities, especially around Black Lives Matter. We started our first Black Lives Matter thing, and have my Black Lives Matter T-shirt on. We started the first one in 2014 in Peterborough in response to the Eric Gardner killing back then, and then we've had every year from 2014 to I believe 2019. I believe 2018 was the solidarity rally in response to the white supremacy group here in Peterborough. That by far was the largest one that we did. Yeah, and just involved with community race relations, helping organizing different things for definitely Black History Month, and just trying to be in the community, building race relations, improving race relations here in Peterborough. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a mom of 5, and also I'm a grandma of 3. Yeah, and the youngest is a month old.
Oh my
Actually, it's
goodness.
a month old today.
Oh,
Uh,
that's so cute.
yeah, so I'm just so happy. Yeah, it's all good. So thank
Congratulations.
you.
Well, thank you for introducing yourself. For people who might not know who I am, my name is Ropafazo Mangwari. I'm a student at Trent University, in my 4th year doing business administration with a specialization in entrepreneurship, marketing and consumer culture. And I know Charmaine because we've actually met a couple of times. I do work with her at CRRC. We've been working together for a year,
Yeah, at least
Yeah.
minimum. But it feels like a long time.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
we
it
did
feels
do the Zim fundraiser a couple of years ago,
yeah.
and I think that's probably where we like really met. But
Actually, oh, actually, I know what it was too. You were definitely that was for the New Canadian Center. They had a Zimbabwean night, and my aunt from Zimbabwe,
mhm.
she came and asked me for a couple of outfits, and you were my outfit. You were the outfit. You were my outfit. It was the yellow outfit. You were in
Yes,
it, and you didn't even know that that was my outfit.
that's
You
crazy.
graced that, and
Oh my
since
God.
then, I've also worn a couple of one of your pieces that I just simply love. But yeah, so that's
Yeah.
another connection, and of course, another connection is technically we're both Zimbabweans.
You're my
Yes,
sister.
and yeah, so my last name is Magumbe, so not Magabe. It's very close. It has the M in it. It has the M in it, so it's Magumbe. Yeah, so I lived in Zimbabwe for 7 years, but I'm Jamaican born, and I've lived in Canada for most of my life. But yeah, so I just love talking about Zimbabwe with Rupa and all the different things to do with Zimbabwe is great.
I'm
So
extremely
I think
passionate about Zimbabwe, so if you want to have conversations, we're here, ready to talk
yeah,
to you about Zimbabwe.
yeah, Zimbabweans and Jamaica definitely too.
100%. Okay, so you and I can go on and on and on, but
Yeah,
the
definitely.
peoples are here for the conversation. So basically, the way we're going to break down the show is that we're going to first start by defining some of the terms we're going to be using. I never want to make the assumption that everybody's aware of what words mean or what names are.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to define everything. Charmaine is going to go into depth with some of them.
Okay.
And then we're gonna ask Charmaine some questions. And then
Mhm.
straight after that, depending on how much time we have, we might have another live session after this one, where
Okay.
we'll basically be having like an open table talk. And if you want to request to be added to the video, you absolutely can. And you can just share your opinions and ask your questions and have the people ask you questions as well.
Okay. Great.
So, we're going to start by defining, I think, three important definitions. The first one is going to be we're going to define what race is, and then that's going to lead us to define what racism is, and then talk about what justice and racial justice means.
Okay.
So, according to one of the dictionaries I found, the word race is used to describe people based on their physical appearance, often using the color of their skin to identify them.
Mhm.
Um, your race could be white or Caucasian, Black, African American, Hispanic, or Latino, Asian, um, um, a mix, and they give like a bunch of other kinds of races that are available. Racism is also called racialism, and it's any act or practice or belief that reflects the racial worldview, the
Mhm.
ideology that humans may be divided into separate and exclusive biological entities called races, that there is a causal link between inherited physical traits and traits of personality, intellect, morality, and other cultural and behavioral features, and that some races are innately superior to others.
Yeah.
So a very simplified version of that is that racism is basically when a group of people are treated unfairly because of their race. I'm almost done with the definitions. I just always want to get them out of the way before we start so that everybody's aware of what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Racial justice, justice first on its own just generally means fairness. So
Mhm.
racial justice means equal and fair treatment of all races. Um, but but what does that really mean? Racial justice means having policies, beliefs, practices, attitudes, and actions that promote equal opportunities and treatment of people of all races. It's also important to note that racial justice is both an individual and a governmental responsibility. It is the responsibility of you as an individual citizen, but it is also the responsibility of the government to promote policies and attitudes that are racially just. So I think those are our definitions.
Mhm.
A lot of really big words and a bit wordy, but I'm sure if you do like a quick Google search, you can find more simpler definitions or more complicated definitions depending on what you want. So Charmaine, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
My
sure.
first question is, how did we get here?
Could I, could I get a
Like,
pen?
could you tell us like a little bit about like the history
Yeah,
and
sure.
of like
Okay, sure.
race relations?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So I'm just trying to sort this out a little bit. Oh, I lost my face.
it's all good.
Um, okay,
CRRC
so
actually just commented and said that racism equals racial prejudice plus social and institutional power. Thank you, CRRC. That is a perfect little
yeah,
nugget.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, and I definitely agree with that. Race is about privilege and power, and
Mm-hmm.
the dominant society um, using their power to making the minority feel inferior. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, usually it's based on skin color. Another thing is as well is in Desmond Cole's book, in the skin we're in, he talks about racism and about how it's more than just hatred. But in his book, he says it's a broad sympathy towards some and a broader skepticism towards others. So
Mm-hmm.
it's people like giving more of a break for a person in the dominant culture, i.e., white people, and saying, "Oh, the benefit of the doubt." That's how I like to see the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas somebody who is a darker skin, they don't give that benefit of doubt. They start to maybe just because they're a person of color, they may be, oh, they're, they can't be that good or, even that smart, especially with smartness. So, for example, for myself, I've had incidents, for example, I play the violin, and I remember taking some music theory courses.
Mm-hmm.
It was like in the Royal Conservatory, and I had a teacher, and we were going through the work, and I had homework, so I'd come back, and she'd mark my homework, and it was always very good. Like my marks would be like 90% or something, really good marks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an older white woman, and I thought we were building a good rapport. Like I thought,
Mm-hmm.
she seemed really friendly. Like most Canadians are very polite, and
Mm-hmm.
don't know that they're gonna what they think about you as a Black person. You just think, oh, they're accepting me because they're talking and we're having conversation. And then after like
Yeah.
maybe 4 sessions, I go there and she marks my work and is of course almost perfect. And then she says to me, "Oh, by the way, you don't have to have someone doing your homework for you." I'm like, oh my
What?
God. Yeah. And I think it's because I was like, she couldn't believe that a Black person could be doing so well, getting like 90% or more. And she's like, you don't have to have somebody else. So it's that sort of
Wow.
racism is that people are skeptic about you because of your skin color,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I don't know about this person. But if you're like the dominant culture, the white, or they're like, oh, this person's really smart,
Mm-hmm.
that's a conversation. So the history of racism, actually, and again, I'm taking from an excellent book that I totally recommend that everybody read, is How to Be an Anti-Racist. He's on my website, just love him. He talks a lot about the history of racism and what racism is about.
Mm-hmm.
So he said that the first time the word race was used is in 1481 um, in a hunting poem. Okay. And in his book,
Oh.
yeah, in his book, Abram X, Kendi X, because the
Mm-hmm.
X is the fact that his father, when they named him, his father named him Henry. That's actually his middle name. And then when he was doing his research on racism, he found
Mm-hmm.
out that Prince Henry, back in the 1500s, 15th century, was the like basically the father of racism. And so he
Oh.
was very upset when he was doing his research and found out that the name Henry comes from, he was the father of racism. So from that point on, he said, I do not want my name Henry, like just no. So
Mm.
that's where the X comes into his name. And the history is that has to do with slavery. And
Mm.
back in those days, slavery was not just limited to African people or people who were Black. Uh,
Yeah.
Slavery was very broad. In fact, Islamic they had started slavery in 1400, and they were taking um, people who were blonde hair, blue eyes, and that's where the word slavery comes from. Slavic
Mm.
countries, European countries. So that's the origins of the word. And so back then, they were taking slaves from all around the world. And so eventually, the word racism came into effect, and it was constructed. That's where
Mm-hmm.
racism is a construct to basically justify what they were doing in the slave trade, right?
Mm.
To
Mm.
say that, and it was a collection of people say, let's make, construct this theory that Black people are inferior. And so that basically that's when racism started off. It was a hierarchy. And so that's why when I also think about racism too, I think about like South Africa and their apartheid
Mm.
system, right? The hierarchy. So racism
Yes.
started out with a hierarchy, and you can see in slavery that is the continent, the African slavery. The fairer you were, the better you were treated, because racism was based on a hierarchy as far as judging you from your skin color. Because, like I
Mm.
said, back in the 14th, 15th centuries when they started slavery, it, um, it, it was all shades of color. But then to
Mm.
justify the African slavery, they made it into they're inferior, they're not human, we could treat them anyway, and it's stemmed up to the point we're at now. So
Okay.
that's the,
Would
that's the
you
foundation of racism.
would you like be able to explain like what's going on right now for people who might not be aware? I feel
Okay,
like the way you explain things is very like easy to grasp and is easy for a
excellent.
lot of people to understand. So if you could like just explain what's going on right now, that would be amazing.
Yeah, and someone just asked, is that where colorism comes from? Absolutely, that's where colorism comes from, right?
Yeah.
Because it was to justify that, the darker you are, the basically the worse off you are in the
Mm,
society, and the superior ones are the ones who are white. And so if you were deemed as fair-skinned Black person, you're going to be in the house,
mm-hmm,
not in the
mm-hmm,
field. You're too good to be digging the dirt, right?
mm-hmm. Gotta be in the house.
You gotta be in the house with the other folks, other
Yeah,
white folks, right?
yeah.
So I could go on about the whole thing about colorism as well, but I don't want to digress. So
Yeah,
this
I will
situation,
say if people want more information about the colorism, we've been talking about colorism for the whole of May. So
mhm,
we do have videos on our YouTube channel of just like conversation about colorism and where it started and how it's like whether there's colorism in this century and within Canada and within Peterborough, colorism in the workplace, colorism in schools, all of that fun stuff and so much more. So all of that is available on our YouTube channel if anybody wants to
Yeah.
check it out. Yeah.
So, just so what's happening now, especially about the protests that are happening in the States,
Mm-hmm.
um, regarding George Floyd, who unfortunately, as a Black person and Black man, he had recently just lost his job. He was a security guard at a bar. He recently lost his job. He went into a store to buy something, and he used a $20 bill, a counterfeit $20 bill. Now, even the owner of the store said he doesn't even know whether or not he knew he, he had
Yeah.
used a counterfeit $20 bill. But so that's what happened. The owner phoned the police, and of course, he must have said a big Black African guy, because you could imagine 4 police officers for a
Mm.
$20 bill counterfeit. That not only that, he was unarmed. When the police get there,
Yeah.
George was sitting in his car, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the videos that I've seen was that there was no resistance for him to, they took him out of the car, he didn't resist, brought him to the sidewalk, he didn't resist, handcuffed him, he didn't resist, sat him on the ground, he didn't resist, led him to the police car, he didn't resist. And
Yeah.
then um, all of a sudden, you see this the other video with the knelt knee of that white police officer. Now, what happened in that situation, it was total, I think, of about up to 10 minutes. The first two
Mm-hmm.
and a half minutes is where you hear, unfortunately, George saying, I can't breathe. It was first two and a half
Mm-hmm.
minutes. The rest of the time, he is limp. He is not talking. He is quiet. So it meant that within that 2.5 minutes, that's when he basically died. So just recently, they did an autopsy, because at the first time they did the autopsy, they said it was not due to a suffocate, like it wasn't due to suffocation. It wasn't due to the fact that
Yeah.
the police officer had put his knee on his neck. That was done
Mm-hmm.
through the county. They said it wasn't due to suffocation. So the family did an independent autopsy, and it
Mm-hmm.
definitely said he died because of that. So
Wow.
there's like, you know, and and another thing that happened, I haven't seen the whole 8 minutes, but I watched,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, enough of it. I don't want to really see the whole thing. But
Yeah.
another part of that was the fact that the bystanders, you could hear them shouting, like, he's saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And then
Yeah.
one part of the video, one of the bystanders actually, he tries to go, like, he tries to break through the
Mm-hmm.
police officers are holding back the bystanders. You could only imagine, and then
Yeah.
so they try to break through, but the police officers holding them back and saying no, 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 no. So
Really?
I can only imagine. It's so basically his only crime was being a Black man, and that was his crime, was being a Black man, and unfortunately he was killed in such a horrendous way. um
Mm.
so that's what's leading up to these, right? And you see on the streets, people are breaking the windows and stuff, and definitely we don't condone violence at all,
Mm. Mm.
but you can understand the frustration of um, hundreds of years of being people judging you just because you're Black. It
Yeah.
could have been. And I mean, the guy was sitting in his car. He was sitting in his
Mm.
car, because when I first heard it, I thought, well, maybe because he was using the fake $20 bill, maybe he was arguing with
With the
the owner of the store, and
owner.
he was being difficult, and the police came and they had to, kind of fight him down to the ground, and then they kneeled on him. But everything shows the guy was actually sitting in his car when this happened. It was like, oh my gosh, he was sitting in his car. So he wasn't even in the store. He was in his car peacefully. They took him out peacefully. They handcuffed him peacefully. There was no resistance.
Yeah.
So it was a violent death, and it was just really shocking to see that, like, just the tragedy of someone dying, because that could have been any Black man. It could have been my
Yeah.
son.
Yeah,
right? It could have been my son.
100%.
And not like, not knowing that he used a counterfeit $20 bill. And then
Mm.
bingo, right?
See, like,
So
I even find it interesting that you said that they had to do two autopsies,
yeah,
because then for me, that shows like there's malicious intent there to some
yeah,
degree. Because why cover it up? Like,
exactly.
why make it seem like it's something that's not, that didn't happen when there's
Exactly.
evidence that it's happened that way?
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
so I guess my next question is, do you think that the problem is with having, I've heard a lot of people talk about this is a bad apple situation. We just have bad apples in the system. Is it a bad apple problem, or
Well,
is it
that,
like a
that's
whole barrel situation?
so that's a really good question because yeah, one bad apple spoils a whole bunch of what is it?
Mm-hmm.
There's a song. I think it's a Michael Jackson song. One bad apple spoil a whole bunch of woo! I don't know what they say. Is there not a
I
song like
just
that?
know it's like there's like, even with I know we talk about it in business all the time, that like whenever there's like fraudulent things that are happening, they always talk about how, well, we need to remove the bad apples. But it's like, if it's happening over and over and over periods of time, is it really just a bad apple, or is the whole barrel already infected? Is
Yeah.
the tree we're plucking the apples from
Mhm.
infected too? So I
Yeah.
want to
So
hear your opinion on that.
no, so I totally it's more than that, right? It's
Mhm.
within the whole system and is how people view black policemen. Like I read Black Cop is another good book. They're police officers regardless if they're black or white, because I think even in that situation, supposedly that police officer who did the kneeling, he's married to an Asian woman. So, and it doesn't matter the skin color of the police officer, because
Yeah.
a black police officer could be have the same reaction, right? It's that
Mm-hmm.
fear of ingrained fear of a black person, black man is like instant, and again that comes from um, back in the slavery, back in slavery is like,
Mm-hmm.
we gotta tame them, and and the concept of that, they're not almost like subhuman, and that's why it was hard to
Mm-hmm.
watch that. It was like he was subhuman, because I have seen other videos of white people getting arrested, and that it never gets to that degree of brutality, right?
Yeah.
So it is more than just one bad apple, because push comes to shove, unfortunately people react that way. So have you ever seen the movie Crash?
No.
Okay, so Crash. So in
Run
that
me by it
movie,
real quick.
yeah, so in that movie Crash, it talks about racism, but so there's this white police officer, younger guy, who
Mm.
at the beginning of the movie, you think that this young white guy, because he seems very nice, and he's like, saying to the other police officers about black people, oh, give them a chance, like, we shouldn't treat them poorly because just because they're black, like he's almost like talking the language of anti-racism, like, and so you're thinking this is a good white cop, like he is
Yeah.
anti-racist, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then at the end of the movie, I'm not going to spoil it, because if you watch it, you could see that he is totally fearful of black people. At the end, you see what happens at the end, and like I said, I'm not going to say it. He is like, wow, it just blows your mind that this guy was really fearful of black, but he's just looking like, oh, I am not that fearful. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think we're all equal, but deep down, he's like any other white police officer, and when
Yeah.
he thinks he's fearful, he's going to use force to
Mm-hmm.
protect himself. And it's just like, it's like, wow, you like, it's like when you watch it, it's like, wow, I did not see that coming. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's, when I think about racism here in Canada, people like to say, "Oh, that's just happens in the South," you know. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen here, but it does happen here. We had uh, Devonte Miller, this is
Mm.
incident in Oshawa where he was beaten, brutally beaten by two police officers. Now, the big difference is, compared the States to Canada, we don't have the videos, right?
Yes.
We don't have the
Mm.
video. We
Mm.
don't
Mm.
have, this is what happened. See, watch this video, right?
Yeah.
So that's missing. Um, so, and he was brutally beaten.
Wow.
Another other horrible example is that situation that happened recently in the States. Amy Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember about that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know she's Canadian?
Really?
Yes, she is from Ontario. Oh my God, she is from Ontario. Graduated
Really?
from, yeah, I think what is it? I could look it up, but she graduated. I wrote it down, but she is graduated from Ontario
Wow.
University. Yeah, that is a Canadian,
We
and
were
that,
rooting for you.
yeah. So, oh, just in case people don't know about that Cooper thing, because we're talking
Yeah.
like everybody knows. So basically, with the Cooper situation in State Central, it was in New York Central Park. It was a man, Black American man. He's an avid bird watcher, and he
Mm-hmm.
was in the park doing his bird watching, and he was in a section of the park in Central New York Central Park in New York City, and that section is deemed you have to have your dog's leash. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you have to. And so this woman comes, this white woman comes, and her dog is off leash. And so what they do in the community, the people who are bird watchers, what they have is they have dog treats, because they know that if they give those dogs owners who have their unleashed dog, they will put the dog on leash because they don't want you to give them the dog treat. So he
Mm.
asked her, he said, please put your dog on leash, and she wouldn't. She was like, for whatever reason, I don't know. So she did it. And then he said, okay, I'm gonna have to do what I have to do. So he took out the dog treats. And she was beside herself, like, oh, don't do that. Like, and she still, I guess, wasn't putting yeah, she is a Canadian.
She's
Somebody just said,
Canadian.
yeah. So so anyhow, I guess at this point she wasn't even trying to put the dog in leash. So he goes, okay. They up the ante, these bird watchers. What they do is they take out their cameras and they start taping. And then usually they'll stop taping as soon as the person puts the dog on leash. And so that usually works. And she started freaking out. She started freaking out, and she was like, I'm gonna call the police. I'm gonna call 911, and I'm gonna tell them that I've been attacked by African American men. I'm being attacked by African American men, and so the whole thing is videotaped. And then he goes, "Go ahead," and he has her on video. He's like, "Go ahead, you call the police and let them know the situation." So she does, and then she's on the phone. There's an African American man. He's attacking me. Oh my
He's threatening
God!
my life.
Yeah, she's hyperventilating, and she's like panicking, and he's just videotaping this. He's a kind of like a far distance, and the dog's
Mm-hmm.
running around and almost suffocating the dog. And he says, "This is an
Yeah.
African American man. I'm in the park, and this African American man is trying to attack me." Can you imagine?
Dramatic.
Yeah. Oh, Windsor or Waterloo.